So I'm just going to run through a few of the issues that I wanted to do an update on. With respect to DR Horton and Lehigh, that's the property west and north of Dry Creek Highlands, which is off of Highland Boulevard, and would be the northwest part of our city. We had 109 acres up there that were planned to be in Highland, according to a boundary agreement we signed with Lehigh back in 1999. But those are changeable; those aren't cast in concrete. And so the property owner, DR Horton, after they bought it, said, we own a couple thousand acres in the area. We want to develop it all in one city. And they asked Lehigh if they would accept an annexation request. Lehigh said yes. And they just stipulated that DR Horton work with us and either do half-acre lots on the 109 acres that are in the county right now that were intended to be with us, or work with us to come up with a better plan. So we looked at the options that we have. Some of the council members weren't happy, but we talked to 4 different attorneys, and they all had the same opinion that if we contested the boundary or the annexation request by DR Horton, that we would lose that battle. And so then we just negotiated with Lehigh and DR Horton to come up with a plan that ended up being a better plan for us overall. And we did. We successfully negotiated half-acre lots adjacent to Highland Dry Creek, both on the west and on the north. They didn't have to do it on the west under the plan of half-acre lots on the 109, because the 109 were just north, not west. The west was already in Lehigh. So that was an improvement. Both DR Horton and Lehigh are going to contribute to a light or possibly a roundabout at the intersection of Highland Boulevard and 11800 North. That's where Ridgeline Elementary comes into play. The other big thing is that Lehigh agreed to help maintain the part of Highland Boulevard that is adjacent to their property. They wouldn't have to do that normally because the road and the park strip or the right-of-way were all in Highland and owned by Highland. So they wouldn't have had to do that. Lehigh wouldn't have had to do that, but they agreed to help offset the cost of maintaining this section of road right there. So that was nice of them. And the cost of putting a light in can be up to $500,000. So splitting that 3 ways instead of just 2 ways with Lehigh was a win for us. And if we'd have split it with Lehigh based on proportionality, we would have paid 3/4 of the cost, and they would have paid 1/4. Now we're paying 1/3, and the other 2 parties are paying 1/3. So that was as good a win as we could get. We couldn't stop it, and so we just tried to make it turn into something that was as best as it could be from a Highland perspective. And I think that's what we ended up with. So then Blue Bison is a land holding company that owns property on the northeast of Highland, so just above Beacon Hills, and then heading west, and it borders Alpine. They had a lawsuit with Alpine. They own about 110 acres there. They had a lawsuit with Alpine to force an access road into Alpine. They went to an appeal authority with the lawsuit and lost there, and they just had a hearing with a judge on Monday of last week, not this week, last week, and he issued a ruling on Thursday, which is unusual. The rulings usually take 2 to 3 weeks at best. and Blue Bison lost on every count in that ruling. Now they could appeal it to the state Supreme Court. I don't know if they're going to do that because reading that ruling from the judge, they were hammered pretty heavily. So absent the second access road on the Alpine side, they're going to be limited to the number of units that they can build by Draper code. And right now, my understanding is that they can build up to 50 homes on those 109 acres. If they sprinkle the homes, if they have sprinklers in the homes. If they don't, they can only build 30. They would need to construct a $7 million road roughly out to Highland Boulevard going west. They don't have permission to connect to our roads. And I don't think there's any legal justification that they can use to try and force a road through. So they have talked to us in the past about potentially using Lighthouse Boulevard to connect into Lighthouse Boulevard. Our council's not favorable to that unless they put a very low cap on the number of units that they would build. Definitely no more than 30, probably lower, 20 or lower. And I don't know if that pencils out for the property owner. So we'll see what happens there. I imagine if there's a chance that the property owner will come and talk to us again, but he knows our constraints and numbers of units. So he may just end up building his road or potentially selling the property to somebody else. Anyway, that's the status on those two things. That's really the two big things that we are in play right now. I hope everyone, your ballots came today. I hope you research the candidates, take your time, talk to them. I know they're all willing to talk to you. Pick ones that you think that will serve Highland as a whole best. I would, my recommendations on how to pick candidates are on my blog. You can go to that. It's mankindperspectives.com. That's mankind with two N's and ends with an S. I have a little write-up about picking members of council. I also have opinions on both propositions. Feel free to ask me what those are. The short version is, I think Proposition 1, even if I supported selling the land and the trails, has a fatal flaw. It was structured, that decision was structured in a way that broke up the land and trails into 6 parcels, so that if in any parcel, any of the segments or sections, any resident didn't want to buy property and or the trail, then only that section would not be sold. Otherwise, the segment would be sold. So I know that there are between 1 and 4 residents there that border the trail that don't want to or may not want to purchase the property. At least one is pretty for sure. So as we're going to break a trail system, even if only one of those sections don't sell, which diminishes the value of the whole system. And I think it needs to be all or nothing. So I think even if you're interested in getting rid of those trails and open space, because of the way it was structured, that decision needs to be revisited if it's to end up being something that's good. The way it's structured now, it's not possible to be good, and I'm not a fan of the decision anyway, but that to me is a fatal flaw. So I will be voting against Proposition 1. On Proposition 11, which is the park sales tax, that's the 0.1% additional tax on taxable items that you purchase in Highland. I'm in favor of that. Over time, we will need to raise our property tax or or adjust fees if we can keep them to help fund the parks. And so putting this tax in place means, yes, we're paying more money, but some of that money that we're getting is coming from people who don't live in Highland, like residents of Alpine or Cedar Hills who shop in Highland. And so we're mitigating a future property tax increase and having non-residents pay part of the tax. So I think that's a win. If we vote yes for it, it's got a 10-year sunset, and the council would need to approve it again, and then the voters would need to approve it again. So you'll have a shot in 10 years, if this passes, to close that off or continue it. Right now, we're estimating that we'll get another $150,000 a year in revenue, which we can use almost immediately to help fund another employee for the Parks Department and to help start refurbishing some of the equipment that's failing. We have several playgrounds that we should replace. Each one is going to cost probably between $100,000 or up to $200,000 to replace, which is money that we haven't set aside. We should do that in the future, and I'm hoping that the council will start setting aside money in future budgets to cover that cost. That's one thing that we need to start doing. We've had a lot of things that we've accomplished, and this is just another step in that direction. So anyway, I'm going to vote for that. And then if you want to ask questions of me relative to candidates, feel free to reach out to me, call me, send me an email or text. I respond to all of those. My number is 801-318-7141. And my personal email is mannrw@gmail.com. And I will reply to questions on that. Feel free to come visit me in the office. I'm there most days. And seeing nobody else here, I will sign off, and you guys have a good rest of the week and enjoy Halloween, and we'll talk to you again.